root of this, whatever appearing, the drama, it is coming from your mind, the subtle suffering. And whatever is happening there and here, it's coming from the ignorance, not knowing who you really are, which means ignoring of not knowing who you really are, the suffering of this duality, So once you go back to non-duality, once you are knowing who you really are, or the truth, or realizing or discovering the truth, so that everything which is the gross suffering, subtle suffering will be disappear. Because the root cause of all this suffering is this ignorance of not knowing who you really are. When I was talking about this subtle suffering, which is not very visible, which means there's a very subtle unsatisfaction. Sometimes when we are alone, we feel lonely, we feel like, what am I doing? I'm not satisfied with my life, my career, But it's there, but it's not that. It's just time to time it really kind of disturb you, but it's not so visible. It's not gross suffering, which like you have to scream for it. You have you're like going through pain. So this, what we call the subtle suffering, is kind of really dissatisfaction. Somehow you are dissatisfied with who you are, your appearance, your looks, your skin, your eye, your name, your nationality, your income, your environment. It's always there. It's not like a big drama, but it's just there. It's just somehow influencing you. You're somehow unsatisfied. But the subtlest suffering is only the spiritual practitioner can experience that. It's a suffering of duality. It's a suffering of this ego. The existence of ego is the suffering, and it's only that who are in a very deep spiritual or in meditation, they can feel the suffering of ignorance, suffering of duality, the suffering of the existence of the ego, the false identity, let's say. So it is there. So the interesting part is this subtlest suffering is there 24 hours for everybody, because the ego is always there, So the interesting part is that the subtlest suffering is influencing this subtle suffering, which is like happening all the time there, and that subtle suffering is influencing the gross suffering. So they are interconnected. It's not like they are separate things. So the interesting part is that if you really, let's say, transform that subtlest in ignorance or dualistic suffering, which means the root of the suffering is the ignorance. So the root of this, whatever appearing, the drama, it is coming from your mind, the subtle suffering. And whatever is happening there and here, it's coming from the ignorance, not knowing who you really are, which means ignoring of not knowing who you really are, or not knowing the truth. And then the suffering of this duality, So once you go back to non-duality, once you are knowing who you really are, or the truth, or realizing or discovering the truth, so that everything which is the gross suffering, subtle suffering will be disappear. Because the root cause of all this suffering is this ignorance of not knowing who you really are. So these are the three causes of suffering, and these are the three level of suffering or stage of suffering, and this is I would say that the very first teaching the Buddha gave, the Four Noble Truths. What is suffering? What is the cause of suffering? And there is the end of suffering. If the end of suffering, then you are liberated, you are enlightened, And there is a method to end this suffering, which I told you to really kind of accumulate the more merit, good karma, and reducing the negative karma. So those are the general method, and the secret method is to really kind of uprooting from this ignorance to really knowing your ultimate truth. So then that is the Mahamudra method or the Dzogchen method, to go directly to the root. But other methods are like a kind of cleansing here, don't do that. Do you see that? So these are the different methods to end the suffering.